Good morning. Welcome to the DunnWisdom Morning Show. Happy Monday, everyone. This is going to be our last Monday broadcast in the month of December and the year 2020. My gosh, where the time went. My name is Melissa P. Dunn. I'm the CEO of MD Marketing Network and the founder of this DunnWisdom movement, where I take absolute pleasure introducing you to thought leaders and change makers who are getting things done in our community. Today's guest actually is someone that I have admired greatly, had the opportunity to work with her. She is a co-founder of the Women's Foundation of Florida, doing amazing work around gender equality, not only in Broward County, but throughout the state of Florida. And of course, she's also a new life coach. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to a fabulous woman, Miss Judith Selzer. Judy, good morning.
Good morning, and thanks so much for inviting me to be here on the DunnWisdom Morning Show. It's such a treat to get to chat with you this morning, Melissa. So exciting.
Oh, thank you. Now, I just realized that I completely butchered your name, and I've known you for 2 years. Shame on me. But could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I have the pleasure of wearing several different hats and really getting to enjoy my time in this world creating social change. So I am one of the co-founders and a board member of the Women's Foundation of Florida. I am also the president of Selzer360, a executive coaching and social change action firm. And as my day job, I also work with Planned Parenthood Action Fund of New Jersey as their executive director, leading social change work around increasing access to sexual and reproductive health.
I love it. My goodness, girl, you are busy.
Like you, no more busy than you.
Hey, Miss Joy, good morning. This is going to be a really fun show for you to watch and share with your grandmas, Miss Joy. Good morning, Miss Cooper. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, Mom. Thank you. Oh, good morning, Mom. Thank you for watching. Fantastic. So could you share, I noticed that you have some pronouns behind your name. Could you help us to understand what that means?
Absolutely. And thank you, Melissa, for bringing that up. I'm so glad that you asked about it. So one of my intentions in 2021, even though we still have a couple of weeks left of 2020, I've already started thinking about my intentions for 2021. And one is to really be incredibly inclusive, particularly of individuals who often are rendered invisible and are really discluded from many things that we do. So the importance of sharing our pronouns and asking others what pronouns we should use when talking with them and referring to them is really a piece of being inclusive and being respectful. We often as a society make assumptions that pronouns should match the way somebody looks, and that is part of something that's socially constructed. So, for example, I'm wearing pearl, so the assumption that I must be identifying as a woman and therefore use she, her pronouns. That's not, in fact, accurate. We all come in different shapes and sizes, and our gender identity is not directly attached to some of the markers that we're often taught as we grow up. So being able to really utilize my pronouns more is also just a way of being inclusive of others and making sure that I'm being respectful of others and not assuming their gender in the same way that I wouldn't want folks to assume my gender. For some folks, I know for sure it can seem like, what in the world is Judy talking about? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And that's okay. You can keep learning about this and over time reading about it and just start having the conversation with friends and families and colleagues about, what pronouns they use. And it really is just a way of making sure everybody feels included.
I love that. Inclusion is the name of the game. It's so critical, right?
It is.
All right. What is Miss Joy saying? She says, enjoy herself, creating social change. Amazing. Yes. So tell us a little bit, what are you working on these days now, Judith?
Oh, so much fun stuff. So one of the things I'm really excited about at the end of 2020 is, of course, that the Women's Foundation of Florida, which I'm really honored to be part of the board of directors there, that we hired this past October our first full-time executive director, Takita King Pang, who you, of course, know and have worked with, is just a rock star. And so with the Women's Foundation, just really seeing the way that our leadership programs have continued to help empower women and girls across the state and to really help them flourish, to lean into their dreams and into their power, to serve and to be leaders within this great world around us. And of course, you helped organize the Women on the Run nonpartisan campaign training program for a while, and yourself now, are leading. So it's just really exciting to see it all come full circle.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, for me, when I was helping to organize the program 2 years ago, I had no intention of running for office. So by the time a year later, when I was asked to run, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's possible, because by then, working with the foundation, I already knew that it was possible,
Yeah.
And so it didn't seem foreign for me it didn't seem so much of a stretch, because I knew, listen, plenty of women of color ran for office and plenty of them won. And even if they didn't win, they learn a whole bunch about themselves. So why not take the journey?
Well, and I'm just so glad you did, because as we know, it's really hard to be what you can't see, right? And so by you leaning into your power, you leaning into your leadership and role as a public leader, other young women, particularly women of color, are going to be able to see themselves in those powerful positions and not think anything of it, not think that this is special or unique, but just that, well, of course, that's the way it is. So
absolutely.
We still have so much further to go in really addressing, gender equity and racial equity and, and immigrant justice and, respect for LGBTQ issues. I mean, our country still has so much further to go. But when I see, amazing leaders like you, step into public leadership, really knowing that you'll be sitting there at that policy table, at that decision-making table, making decisions, with your values and with the community's best interest in mind. I know that things will continue to change and be different, and most importantly, be better. So thank you for taking that on and doing it.
Well, thank you and the Women's Foundation for making that a part of your mission, to making sure that more women recognize the fact that it's possible for them. So I'm grateful for the work that you do. Now, you mentioned the Selzer360. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have been working with nonprofits really in that gender equity and social justice space for the last 20 years. And on and off throughout the periods, I've either been on staff at an organization or I've been a consultant. And so my consulting firm is Selzer360, and we really focus on strategic planning, on really being deliberate about building teams and empowering others, and how you utilize advocacy and communications to create ripple effects of really impactful, meaningful, measurable social change. And one of the programs we've really been working on at Selzer360 is executive coaching. Some people call it life coaching. I call it executive coaching as well, because you're the executive over your own life, whether you are the CEO of a company or you are the CEO of your household. Really being deliberate and thinking through, what are your values, what is really important to you, and how you're going to show up in this world can dramatically change all of the decisions you make when you are intentional about them. And I think most of us often go through our days thinking we know what our values are and that we're being intentional. But if you don't specifically name it, if you don't specifically call it out, if you don't really think through it, it is very easy in just the heat of the moment to make a decision that isn't fully embracing you and how it is you want to show up in this world. And you know this, you with your DunnWisdom morning show, I mean, every day you're encouraging folks to really lean into who they are and how they want to show up in this world. So I know we're pretty aligned on that.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. And so for your practice, do you mainly work with organizations or do you work with individuals as well?
I'm really lucky that I get to work with both. So I will work with staff within nonprofit agencies, and work with them as individuals and then as teams. And then I also just work with individuals, within their own life. So, there could be a executive at an organization who brings me in because maybe they're new in their role, or they're wanting to change the culture in their organization in some way. And so they want a sounding board, and they want somebody to help them, really lean into, again, figuring out how it is that they want to lead and what's their leadership philosophy. And so I can work with them on, it's a series of regular 30, 45-minute conversations. We do them either via Zoom or via the telephone. And really, it's a lot of visioning, a lot of thought-provoking questions that lead somebody to really figure out what they probably already knew is within them, but just pulling it out and helping them really embrace their vision for the world, and recognizing that we really have in every moment the ability to make a decision about how we want to act, how we want to show up, how we want to leave our mark on others around us, and that we have the power to really be a great influence in the world around us. So it's a really it's an exciting job to get to be there for those aha moments, for individuals and for teams to discover, what it is they want to do in this world, in this life.
Yeah, I know the difference that coaching makes. I mean, as a coach myself, but more importantly, having been coached. And I have to tell you, Judith, the whole time I was campaigning, I had a coach supporting me.
That's fantastic.
And there's this, I talk on the show a lot about the creative process and how it all really starts in your mind, right? And so for me, and I know for a lot of the women that came through the Women on the Run program, fundraising was a challenge.
Yeah.
And so I literally had several coaching sessions with my coach, Don Lovelace, to kind of identify what the root cause of that was.
Yeah.
And we actually traced it down to when I was a kid in Jamaica, my grandmother telling me not to ask anyone for anything. When you, the thing that you send your kid out to say, don't take money from strangers, or, don't speak to strangers. Like, we literally traced the root cause back to that. And once I got it, and I was like, oh, well, you know what? That thought pattern served me really well when I was 7, and she didn't want me asking strangers for things, right? But not so much when I'm 47 and I need to ask strangers for money.
Yeah, to invest in your campaign. But see, that's the gift of coaching. That's what's so fantastic. And I love that, you invested in yourself, and even through the campaign, set aside the time to say, hey, I value myself enough to take some time to figure out what's going on inside. Because we have all of these beliefs that we've just been like, it's like you've got this little backpack, you're putting one belief in there, one belief in there, one belief in there, all as we grow up. And we don't really realize sometimes the weight of all of those beliefs we're carrying around. Now, some of those beliefs, some of those values, some of those stories, they all are incredibly valuable because they make up who we are now, right? So it's not trying to devalue or discount some of them, but it's exactly what you're saying. Does that still bring you value right now? Do you still need it in this moment? Is that belief limiting, or is it empowering? Is that story limiting, or is that story empowering? And at different moments in our life, it can be both, right? But figuring out what it is in that moment, and for you recognizing that, hey, don't ask others for help, don't ask others for money. On the one hand, that's incredibly empowering. Do it for yourself, put one foot in front of the other, do it for yourself. You are independent, you're capable, you are self-sufficient. That's a very empowering version of that. On the other hand, well, don't ask anybody for anything. Don't ask for help. Certainly don't ask for money to invest in your dreams and your business and your campaign and your, public service. That can be very limiting. So, I think part of the joy that I have in this as well is helping myself and others every day recognize it's not all or nothing. It's not completely one way or another. It's all shades of how you use that in any given moment. And that's like anything else. It's an exercise. You have to move every single day.
Yep. It can be either or, both and.
Yes,
We get to
exactly.
decide. All right, Portia, good morning to you, Portia. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Yeah, it could be either or and both, whatever. We get to decide what it means for us in this moment, right?
We do. We really do.
Uh-huh. So talk to me a little bit about your social justice work.
Yeah, so I am really lucky that both in my paid professional life and in my volunteer life that I've been able to really lean into issues and causes that are near and dear to my heart, and that I don't know what it is. It's obviously, I think, a sign of the influence that my parents and my grandparents had on me. But I just have always been that individual who wakes up and looks around and sees injustice and feels this need to do something about it. I remember sitting literally at the foot of my, grandmother my maternal grandmother, when I was younger, and hearing her tell me stories about being a teacher in New York City and the inequality that she saw, and just how important it was to do something about it, to help others, and to fight injustice. And so I think those lessons just seeped into my heart and my mind. And so the Women's Foundation, being one of the co-founders of that organization for the last 11 years, we've really tried to empower women to seek out justice and to work together as a form of leadership, of righting wrongs, of addressing inequities. And then my work at Planned Parenthood for the last 15 years in different states has really been about ensuring that all individuals can access the healthcare that they need to lead healthy lives. And we continue to see, in state after state, unfortunately, politicians working to really erode access to basic healthcare that saves lives in the name of politics. And that's why I'm really thrilled to see a new administration coming into the White House in January, one that is, much more reflective of the world that we live in. It looks like from every day as I'm turning on the news and seeing somebody new who's being announced as
Yes, the cabinet looks fabulous.
Right?
I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, it's diverse. I mean, there's always more we can do, but
diverse and qualified.
Yes.
Diverse and qualified. Yes.
And to have a woman of color as our vice president. I mean, there just aren't words for how powerful this moment in time is. And and just the possibilities that are there to really address a lot of the inequality that has just, really impacted lives in dramatic ways. And we've certainly seen, obviously, during the coronavirus pandemic, how the institutions, how the systems we have are really set up for some people who have, and a whole lot of people who do not have, are essential workers, who are literally the backbone of our community, who are keeping our grocery stores and our food chains and our medical systems and our transportation systems open, don't have the same access to healthcare, don't have the same food security and housing security. So I think the pandemic has really broken open for many folks who are wearing blinders still. It has really, for many folks, been able to break those doors open and take those blinders off to see the overwhelming inequality that is there, and that we must do something about it. So I'm at a place that I'm trying to be really hopeful with so many new great leaders like yourself and the Biden-Harris administration coming in, that we're going to, as a community, stop just talking about it and actually do more about it.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder, I think that change is something that can happen on a big scale, right? In terms of systematic change. But I also think that each of us have a responsibility to be the change that we really want to see. Can you help us to understand what we can do individually around gender equality and around racial justice?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Melissa, and thanks for asking about it, because yes, as institutions, as companies, as government, we work collectively to address these issues, but that doesn't mean that we as individuals can't make a difference. And quite frankly, it's the only thing that really ever does, right? Because institutions are made up of individuals choosing to use their influence and their power to either for good or for bad, right? So as individuals, there are everyday activities we can take. We started with one at the beginning of the show, which was not assuming somebody's gender and ensuring to be inclusive by saying, hey, I'm Judith Selzer and my pronouns are she and her. What about you? And inviting somebody to share their pronouns as well. So that way you don't misgender them and make them feel invisible. I think another way is just in every company, in every organization where you're working, particularly when you are in a position of influence or power, is speaking up and making sure that you are paying people equitable wages, that you are making sure that when you have employees, that you are providing, healthcare and childcare and benefits and paid time off and sick days. These might seem like obvious things to some folks. These might seem like, oh my gosh, I can't do that at all. That would be way too expensive to other folks. I think that as individuals that we have a responsibility starting off in our everyday lives to take care of those around us. So, for folks who are watching this right now, knowing too that when you're in a conversation and you hear a friend or a family member make an inappropriate joke, you don't just say, great, well, I'm not going to, see them again for the next holiday. No, you need to speak up and say, hey, here's why that is really not appropriate to say and why it offends me, and try to have those conversations, particularly in trusted places. It's about speaking up when you see any kind of injustice and making sure that the way you're treating people is something that you can be proud of, and that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and say, did I use my time on this earth to make the world better, starting with just the individuals around me, or did I put my head in the sand like an ostrich? And
that's such a really valid point, because a lot of us are in those closed family spaces and someone says something inappropriate or what they think is a joke that makes, I'm Caribbean, and sometimes I'm in rooms where people, make jokes or sing songs that are offensive to the LGBTQ community, and it's up to me to say, listen, no, that's not okay. That word is not okay.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that if more of us kind of identify what our core values are, and make sure that the people and the spaces that we're in are reflective of that, I think the world will transform tomorrow.
I think you're so right. And I think that is the big piece of what you shared, Melissa, is identifying what your values are. And if you know that going into conversations, into just those everyday moments, if you have more clarity about it, it is a lot easier to share your voice, right? If you're clear about what you care about and what you think is right and what you think is wrong. And it's part of why I really enjoy the coaching work that I get to do, which is about helping people identify what's most important to them and what's the mark, what's the impact that they want to have on those around them. Once you're aware of that, once you're intentional about it, it becomes it's not so much that it's easier, but it just becomes so much more clear about why you need to speak up. Because there's always risk, right? For everybody, there's always a level of power and privilege that somebody has, and a sense of fear that somebody has of what repercussions they're going to be facing for challenging the status quo. But if you're really clear about why you want to challenge the status quo, about why you want to make the world better, then in those moments, whether it's your boss or your best friend, you're better equipped and able to speak up and say, hey, you know what, I just need to let you know that doesn't work for me. What you just said there makes me incredibly uncomfortable, and here's why. And so here's why I think we need to really think this policy in our office, or here's why I really don't like that joke and I don't think that you should make it anymore, because here's the impact that it has. But it's hard to do that if you're not clear about it yourself.
Yep, for sure. And then maybe you're the one making that joke, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to really examine who you are and what you stand for. And sometimes in the examination, you're going to uncover things that just may have served you 20 years ago, right? 60 years ago, but in today, it doesn't serve you anymore. And it's okay to change. It's okay to shift.
Yeah. And that's really important because we are all also a product of our families and of our communities and the socialization that we've had. And so being willing to look back and say, gosh, you know what? I had that person in my life, again, whether it was a coworker, a teacher, a family member, a friend who was particularly influential. And I just thought the world of them. But looking back on it now, man, they really had some views that did not serve justice, that did not serve respecting everybody, did not serve equity. You can still honor the influence they had in your life, but also recognize that you don't need to adopt and hold on to all of those values as well. And I think sometimes as folks are trying to rethink how they show up in this world, part of that challenge that they're facing is that it's de-identifying with with somebody important in their life who taught them those views. And so I think creating space for one another and yourself to say, hey, not everything about somebody is perfect, and that you can, if they're still living, let them know that, hey, you don't agree with these views. And that can be incredibly empowering. And it's not being disrespecting of the other influences that have been positive in your life that they've had. And I think that's a real challenge for some folks. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is recognizing to have grace and compassion for yourself and for others. And that's not the same thing as staying silent. You can absolutely and have a responsibility to. You must speak up and say, hey, those values are not mine. And that is not the way I want to show up in this world. But you can still have compassion for yourselves and for others, who've made those mistakes. Some of them, mistakes is putting it mildly, right? I mean, really, unjust actions, which people need to be held accountable for.
For sure. And I love this whole conversation. Mrs. Lopez says we can all do our part, starting within our communities. Yeah. Yes, for sure. Portia says, I agree, Joy, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's very complicated and it's a process. Yes, self-examination.
Yeah.
I love that hashtag, Portia.
Yeah. And we have to all be willing to do that, to hold up the mirror and say, where have I hurt people, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and where am I going to do better? Because while we cannot go back and change the past, what we can do is be much more intentional about showing up in every minute and in every day ahead of us, treating others with, it's like when we're little kids and we're taught about the golden rule. I mean, I wish as adults we just held on to that, treat others, as you would like to be treated. And unfortunately, there's just still a lot about the entire makeup of our country, about our society, about our culture that's been steeped in racism, that's been steeped in sexism and homophobia and xenophobia. And so undoing all of that, I mean, if it took 400 years to get here, you can't undo it in a day. But I'm somebody who really does like to move forward and try to hurry history and change things, as you are as well. And so we've got our continued work cut out for us. But that's just part of our responsibility being here on this earth.
Well, listen, if we can inspire everyone who's watching this show, and I know we're going to get a couple hundred of you that's going to see this episode, if we can inspire even 50% of you to take on the self-examination challenge and to not only identify your own core values, but to see areas in your life where perhaps you can speak up and be a part of the change. I think that would be powerful, don't you?
It would be incredibly powerful, because just think about that ripple effect in that person's life and in the lives of the coworkers and family members and friends of those individuals. And so, you take a tiny little pebble and you think, man, I'm not going to move anything in that ocean or that lake, but you drop it and you see, right, the ripple effects.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference. And so we all do our part, whether it's making sure that we're paying people who we work with properly, whether we're showing appreciation for others, whether we're making sure that when we see any kind of injustice or inequality, we speak up and say, hey, wait, that doesn't work for me. Nope. I'm not going to be just a bystander here watching this bad thing happen. I'm not saying this stuff isn't scary. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But I think when more of us start living our values really intentionally, it becomes easier to create the society that we want, one that we can be proud of.
I love that, Judith. I love that. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you could share with the audience?
I think just to remember who you want to be, to just think about, even just for 30 seconds in the morning when you wake up, about how you want to leave your mark on the world, even if it's just, on the conversations and the feelings of love you want to share with your children or partner that day. If you start off every morning intentionally thinking about the mark you want to leave, you go through the day with that in your subconscious, and I just think it makes the day better and the world better.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
I did as well. Thank you so much, Melissa, for having me. This was just such a fun conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll keep having more conversations. We'll have you come back on.
That would be great.
All right, great, fantastic. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the DunnWisdom Morning Show. I really would like to encourage you to do some self-examination today, to identify what your core values are and how you're showing up in the world. And if you see an opportunity for you to perhaps speak up, please do it, okay? One person can be a whole change. A whole new ripple, a whole new possibility can be created just by you deciding to be the best version of who you can be. Remember, be kind and loving to yourself today. You deserve it. Be well.